Okay, awesome. I see it on the YouTube, so I will let you get started, Karen.
Excellent. All right. So welcome everyone today, and thank you for joining us.
Okay, awesome. I see it on the YouTube, so I will let you get started, Karen.
Oh, and there's Angelina. Excellent. So welcome to the Robert F.
Welcome everyone
Kennedy
today,
Human
and
Rights.
thank you.
Is there an
Awesome. I see it on the YouTube, so I will let you get started, Karen.
Okay, well, welcome everyone to the RFK Human Rights Speak Truth to Power speaker series. My name is Karen Robinson. I'm the Human Rights Education Speak Truth to Power Program Director. And I'm just thrilled with our speaker today and our student moderator. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions as we're going through the day or through this session, just pop them in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. And at this point, I'm going to pass it over to our student moderator, Angelina from Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders in Austin, Texas. So Angelina, take it away.
Or through this session.
Angelina, I think you're still muted. You might have to do it from the phone. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, my name is Angelina Pouhe. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We had a problem with the microphone, but thank you for joining us for the Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights Speak Truth to Power speaker series. My name is Angelina Pouhe. I'm a student at the Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders, and I'm a student at the Ann Richards School, but I'm also a leader within my school and the surrounding world. I believe in the rights of women and girls, and I believe that they are not only important, but very, very necessary. I couldn't be more excited to have this discussion about the rights of women and girls and how we can and must contribute to women and girls' rights with Zaynab Nawaz. To begin in this discussion, Zaynab Nawaz and I will be discussing the rights of women and girls and how to contribute to women and girls' rights. Women and girls have always been hindered or prevented from their rights to contribute to the world or live comfortably. Through this conversation with Zaynab Nawaz, we will determine what the conditions that women and girls face today are, what affects the conditions of women and girls rights, and how women and girls rights can be contributed to through philanthropy, programming, financial assistance, and more, and what the effects of women's rights are, including how women in the world are affected by how women are supported so that they can live comfortably and successfully. As Zaynab Nawaz has made an immense difference in the lives of women around the world, we will all learn so much from her and her contributions to the empowerment of girls and women. The necessity of women and girls' rights must be discussed, and I will ensure that I make the very most of this discussion with Zaynab Nawaz about such an important and necessary topic about the world. I'm very excited to have this discussion about women's rights and the pursuit of women's rights with Zaynab Nawaz. Today, we will be speaking with the speaker, Zaynab Nawaz, who is the Senior Director of Program and Learning with Women Moving Millions. And Zaynab has improved the lives of women and girls around the world as the Program Director. Zaynab Nawaz has made an immense difference in the lives of so many. And as a Program Director in the Women Moving Millions initiative, she has not only worked to improve lives through financial means, but also simply through empowering girls and women and showing them that they can change the world too, like she had. So let's start with our discussion. Zaynab, could you please tell us a little bit about your journey in the human rights space, and more specifically, your focus on women and girls' rights?
Thank you, Angelina, for that generous introduction. I'm so happy to be with you all today and speak a little bit about how I started my career a little over 20 years ago, really focused on women and girls' rights. And now I've ended up philanthropy adjacent, working with an incredible network of philanthropists that support initiatives that advance gender equality around the world, very much centering gender and racial equity. And I love building the leadership programs where I am right now for this, very important, influential community that's making an impact, close to home in Canada and the States, but then also all around the world. I grew up in a family of girls with sisters and really strong matriarch role models. So I stand on the shoulders of a lot of women in my family, aunts, cousins, grandmothers, who really set an example of what feminist leadership looked like in the home and outside. And I grew up very much as a citizen of the world, discussing current events, news of the day with feminist parents around our dining room table, and just knew that I had a lot of great opportunities around access to education and just other learning opportunities. So I think it's no surprise I ended up working in so many female-dominated spaces. I played on sports teams. I started out at a single-sex school as well. And just, I had so much interest in international relations, but honestly, I could have studied any subject, and I think it would still have led me to human rights. I started off my career, a good almost decade of my career at Amnesty International. And I had been in a club when I was in the 5th grade. And so, learning about human rights issues from around the world was very much of interest, but I really cut my teeth at Amnesty and learned about social justice and human rights histories and the sheroes and the movements, and just had a bunch of different jobs in a few offices, and was able to really work locally and globally, work with great mentors who I think set this kind of tone of sponsorship for me, opened the door. And mentorship works both ways. It's something I very strongly believe in, and I've sought out mentors throughout my career and tried to be that for others as well. And it really does work both ways with the learning. So as a campaigner and a researcher at Amnesty, I was lucky enough to work with Alaska and Native American communities. I was able to work with human rights defenders in Turkey and Pakistan, the country where my family comes from. And that's kind of how I went along my path to philanthropy. For 10 years after my 10 years with Amnesty, I was lucky enough to work with some incredible private family foundations and become a grant maker and a program officer. And there I was able to continue being a learner of history and movements. I'm a lifelong learner. So to be a student in that way continues, and I worked in the Americas and in Asia, and was able to work with incredible local, regional, national, international organizations and fund them. But then also work with many other funders and practitioners who came from a lot of different disciplines. And I think that's been the great joy in my work as well. Women's rights intersects with so many thematic areas and so many other issues. So from my time at Amnesty to working in foundations, I was able to work across departments, and to work with others who also had a strong gender lens is incredibly rewarding. And I found it really gratifying to work with a trust-based philanthropy approach, which I can get into a little bit later as well, because philanthropy's really changed. And I think of how I would have been introduced or thought about philanthropy 10, 20 years ago is very different where it is now. And I've just been very excited to be an active part of in that journey with colleagues.
That's wonderful. And when it comes to the gender lens, and basically, as many know, a gender lens is taking the existing differences between women and men and sort of analyzing the situation and approaching the situation and helping women in a different way, where you consider these gaps that are between women and men. And I was wondering how you've considered the gender lens in Women Moving Millions, and what are some specific examples of your use of the gender lens?
Well, the programs that I'm building right now for philanthropists, because we're very much a convener, they really are meant to bring our philanthropists together to learn, to connect, to collaborate, and ultimately invest more, resources that could be funding. So it's financial, but even beyond the check, it's partnership, to be in relation with grantee partners. And that's absolutely, the approach that we had in trust-based philanthropy as well, that I learned as a grant maker. So, women are leaders in local communities, whether it's rural or urban, and many of their challenges and opportunities are very similar. Some of my most rewarding moments with foundations was when we had cross-regional convenings and we brought together widows from Nepal with widows from Kenya, and realized they shared a lot of the same challenges and opportunities, and were celebrating small successes and learning from each other. So to be that kind of convener you learn a lot, and you can also see a lot of impact in how programs are rolled out. So funding networks, new initiatives, that's where I found my passion. I was very motivated by what I was seeing women were already doing in their communities and what they were called upon to do. If they ran, a women's human rights organization, I'll take Burma, Myanmar for an example, then if there was some sort of national crisis in democracy or a natural disaster, often folks would go to these women's organizations because they were very organized to activate. They had the relationships and knew what was needed in many local communities, so they could really galvanize a lot of support and activate. And many of the programs that began for girls and young women and women of all ages often benefit the entire community and can be rolled out nationally at any point as well. So it doesn't really matter if it's maybe a program that addresses poverty or is education and training or to eliminate violence against women. Something on the environment. Often it can have, much greater impact, but often begins with some incredible girls and women coming together and figuring out what their unique needs might be in any situation. And so, yeah, I'm just energized by what I've seen. Some incredibly creative and innovative solutions come out of difficult moments, and it's been a great part to feel, very much a sense of a global community in all of this work, and that there's so much learning that still would benefit from if there was more access to exchanges and convenings and better internet in places. I think that we would have a lot more solutions coming up from just everyone in communities. But yeah, can't say enough about some of the incredible girls and women partners I've had. And maybe I can say a little bit more about trust-based philanthropy, because I think I keep coming back to that. And it's something that I very much learned during my time. When you join philanthropy, you come from so many different areas of study, as I mentioned. And I was lucky enough to have come from a nonprofit background in activism and organizing and research. But I was working with folks in philanthropy from government, from think tanks, from journalism, from the arts, from education. And we just had so many different experiences and expertise that absolutely, I think, added to how we became better grant makers and understood, what was really needed to be in true partnership. And so I would say, the older model of conventional grant making was probably just writing a check, and that has its part. But very much with trust-based philanthropy, it flips the script, and it really centers that you are promoting a culture of shared power and centering relationships and really fostering mutual accountability. And so, in that, I learned a lot about just unrestricted giving, just giving year after year and not having it be project, but general or core support. So you really have to do your homework and see what a community needs. It's been quoted much, nothing about us without us. And so you need folks who are invested in the solutions to be at the table, and anything that I could do to be as transparent and responsive, I took very seriously. I believe in feminist leadership and leading, very much centering collaboration and inclusion. And I think that just simplifying and streamlining paperwork sounds simple, but sometimes it can be harder within established institutions. So I just appreciated the team of folks, men, women, just everyone who was committed to just offering support beyond the check and grant making. So there's a lot out there and critiques around trust-based philanthropy, and I think that's very healthy. So I would encourage folks to read more about that who have an interest. And I'm very happy where I am right now as well, working with a community of philanthropists who think about trust-based philanthropy, who lead by example, who believe in mentorship and sponsorship, and who are just really committed to funding movements to win, wherever they are, locally, nationally, regionally, and internationally. And right now where I work, we are really looking to empower and support women to use their voice, power, and influence to advance gender equality.
My next question is about these solutions. So I know that there has been a lot of changes over the years when it comes to what solutions we need and what the needs of the woman community are. I was wondering what changes you have seen over the decades through your work, and how you would recommend responding to those changes?
Oh, I've seen great success, I think, in light of many challenges that just happened. Like I mentioned, there have been natural disasters, there have been changes in democracy, there have been rollbacks on women's democracy, but just so many intersecting areas. So when I left philanthropy, with my colleagues who worked on other regions outside of my geographic focus, we knew that there was a mental health crisis coming even before the pandemic. And I know that's just, now it's even more of a focus. So when we think about mental health and climate and economic empowerment, there's just so much intersection. And I think that, again, I would just say that the creative and innovative solutions are needed from those who are most impacted. So for folks to have time and space to, to really think about what is most needed, I'm harkening it back now to trust-based philanthropy again, but it's not as simple as assessing, an organization's capability to accept funding or, what a community might need as a one-time grant. But you really have to build relationship with folks and go to those folks who really know what's needed and the history of, of a country, of a region, of movements, to know what's going to benefit girls, women, LGBTQIA+ communities. And so, I've seen great models of co-director leadership. I've seen great funding and time and space given to succession planning. So when someone is stepping down, that there be the time and space to have really good planning and that, transfer of knowledge to really, again, set up women, young women, girls to succeed and to win. And you're reminding me, now that I'm sharing these stories, and I have many of challenging times and also like great opportunities that came out of challenges. I've seen some incredible young women and girls networks thrive because there was an idea, an idea of something, our solution for a community problem that just led to something, leading to not even what you might have expected. And then others take on the work as well. But funding new networks and girls initiatives and projects is just as exciting as, funding or supporting in any way with any resources, time, talent. It's not just about funding. Just funding newer initiatives is really exciting because funding a pilot, there's an expectation that something might fail, but to be with folks long-term, again, however you are, you don't have to be a philanthropist, but however you are supporting something in your community or something that means something to you, that's really where you see work being done and good, true, meaningful collaboration. And you meet folks where they are. And so that for me has been, incredibly, I think, poignant in just my learning journey also in this human rights and social justice space. You start wherever you can. There was the act local, think global kind of bumper sticker that was around when I was growing up. And I think it still works. It still means something to me.
One particular focus that is very, used and spread around at my school, and I know communities around the world with girls, is that you do have to start small. Starting small, contributing to your surrounding community, and through that you can begin preparing to, and in doing that, contribute to the surrounding world. What are your thoughts on starting small with these sorts of efforts? And if there were young girls who wanted to do something similar as Women Moving Millions, how would you recommend they start? And how do you feel about starting small compared to maybe pursuing something much bigger at first?
Well, here I would absolutely go back to my time at Amnesty International, which was also a membership-based organization and working with high school students, college students, local members. Being invested in an organization and knowing what issues brought you in, it can be very overwhelming to think about everything and to prioritize, but, it's just as important something happening in your backyard and there can be learning from something you're also reading in a report happening halfway across the world. And again, I go back to the, sharing a lot of the same challenges. So, whatever motivates you, whatever is something that you feel passionate about and can bring others into, it probably does have some aspect of intersecting with other issue areas. And the joy of working on something like this, especially in community with, fellow students or neighbors or your family, is that there will be some learning along the way. And, I'm kind of jumping ahead to advice that I always remember and that, drives me and how I think of how I show up, where I put my time and commit to personally and professionally, but just staying engaged and informed. There's always room around any decision-making table for more folks, and just encouraging that diversity and inclusion, I think is always top of mind for me. So, just it's more fun to figure out a solution to something with others. And so whatever it is that, you are seeing in your community, whether it's to work, there's whatever your call to action is around, maybe changing a law, working on legislation, doing advocacy around a policy. Culture is always changing, and I think that campaigning with a lowercase c or a capital C can happen from anyone, and we're over the time when you have to have a certain amount of years of experience or a certain degree to be taken seriously to change any policy or a law, or have an awareness kind of raising campaign, or to raise funds for something where you see there's a need. It can be done with anyone at any age, wherever you're from, with just the smallest amount of resources. And sometimes you can make, the biggest impact actually when you have the least amount of resources. And then you make a stronger case as you go bigger and grow, and you bring more folks in. But it just starts with an idea. You just have to, put your energy someplace that you feel passionate about. I can't say enough about that passion, what feels passionate. Sometimes it won't make sense to others, but if it makes sense to you, I think you can, convince others to come along.
And another question I had is branching off of the previous question, is when you are a young person, and I know that you have contributed greatly to the world, and I was wondering what drew you first to having this purpose of making contributions, particularly to women's rights, but also to the world. What drew you to this field, and what drew you to having such a mission to improve the world?
Oh, I appreciate that, Angelina. I think I wanted to be part of a community that felt as passionately as I did also about intersecting issues. I didn't have one issue. I think maybe ending violence against women was something that maybe drew me in when I saw there was so much injustice around the world and closer to home. And I thought, what can I do, to raise money for a domestic violence shelter, or, can I work at a rape crisis line? What can I do? And then I just saw there was so much intersection with other issues. And so it was really because I was learning from so many colleagues and other folks I met while volunteering. I had a paid internship at Amnesty before, I worked there, and felt very strongly about those paid internships, because as much as I learned, in other jobs that I had after school on the weekends in the summer from when I was a teen and growing up, you learn a lot about working with people and managing and all of that good stuff. But it was really when I was in a human rights organization, I learned just how many pieces of the puzzle come together with folks working on just a common cause. And there was a passion, whether someone was working on social media or communications, in IT, in fundraising, in campaigning, in research, from folks volunteering to folks working on finance and accounting. I realized that there were so many parts to the puzzle when you are running a nonprofit. And working for smaller and larger nonprofits, you see difference between resources. But I learned most, I think, that so many programs needed a stronger gender lens. And for me, I knew that I was committed to women's rights and girls' rights, but also then working in philanthropy, learning, funding, working with more LGBTQIA+ activists, and campaigners and funders was also, a big expansion in my learning journey. And I think just now seeing how I keep using the word intersected, because it's true. There's so much intersection, and feminism doesn't just apply, however you look at it, to women's and girls' human rights, but that kind of collaborative, inclusive, leadership and approach to work works, whether you're working in arts, media, culture, and climate, and mental health, and economic empowerment, in reproductive and sexual health and rights, and public health. I mean, I just see there's so much opportunity for women's rights work to be expanded. I think there's about 3 different questions, in my answer there. But yeah, I've always just stayed committed to women and girls' rights, probably also because it wasn't until I was a little bit older after college that I really learned about all these international conferences and conventions, and that really, I think, brought more support and intention from countries around the world. And then I didn't get that as much in my education, and I wish that I had sought that out a little more. So I had a real education that also began after college, and that continues from the books I read that I'm recommended, that I suggest, from the news sources that I seek out. So again, I keep bringing it back to being a lifelong learner. I think that's served me well.
Another question I had was about your international work. So of course, to do international work, you need to spread out, branch out, and it does take collaboration. I was wondering what your thoughts are with the collaboration and the sort of combining of, different people in different areas, how you'd recommend using that collaboration when thinking on a smaller scale, maybe, because I know that you work with many different people in many different countries to advance the rights of women and all of these other intersecting issues. Do you have any tips for someone who is trying to expand an effort that they have to a bigger scale, or even something that you've taken away that could contribute to the general idea that collaborating is something that anyone can do?
Well, we have the benefit now of so many social media platforms. And now I think, even though some folks are going back to the traditional email newsletter, which was really popular quite a few years ago, just the way I learned about organizations around the world while I was in philanthropy, before I was in philanthropy, was reading, magazine articles, news articles, online, going from website to website, and really trying to figure out what they were working on, who they were working with. And that's how I learned about partnerships. And, asking folks for help. I mentioned the mentorship model a little while ago, but you don't need to, be connected to everyone on LinkedIn, but, reaching out to someone and asking who they might know, or even cold calling, cold emailing, I guess you would say, just emailing someone, expressing interest. Folks still do that with me, and I appreciate it. And I used to do that and still do that. And I'm delighted when someone's able to give me some of their time, even if it's to just point me in the right direction or make some suggestions about something I might, investigate a little bit further. And so with the international collaboration part of it, working in philanthropy, I was very lucky that there were a lot of folks who took time to convene some of us together. And so there were a couple of really incredibly committed and, dedicated funders who would say, well, let's get together all the folks who work on gender in this geographic area, work on this specific theme. And we would find time and, use Zoom before I think most folks knew there was a Zoom 10 years ago, and Skype before that. And we would meet regularly and kind of share what we were working on, how we were working on it, back to where we were finding opportunities and challenges. That's how we would also sometimes find new grantee partners. If we were lucky enough to travel together, we would do that. But most of all, the matchmaking. I get to do a lot of great matchmaking with philanthropists now in the community that I support. We don't make grants, but it's, just a really wonderful part of my job that I can matchmake philanthropists and make sure that they're meeting each other in the community that I support right now with building leadership programs. But in philanthropy, as well as a grant maker, we would just try to connect folks with each other and make sure that if something was, someone was doing something new and exciting, that we knew about it, we supported it. And, there were a tremendous amount of reports coming out, but also tools that folks could use to make their lives easier to, ask for reports, to submit grant, what did we call it? I can't remember now because it's been so long ago, but to submit the grant making applications. And so we just, we really tried to put ourselves in others' shoes as well, because, we knew that there were some challenges that we faced when we were on the other side of being in philanthropy and submitting some of the grant applications and reports. And so when we were on the philanthropy side, we knew that if we could collaborate with each other, we could come up with some more streamlined processes and templates. So I would say wherever I've been, I've worked at quite a few places now. There's always a way that you learn to work when you approach someplace, but breaking that mold too is always encouraged. The word disruptor gets thrown around a lot, but if you have an idea of how to make someone's life, a little easier and to streamline something, or if something just doesn't make sense, if there's a way to tweak something or improve on how you do a site visit when you go to a country, you should try it out and share that. And, there were a lot of things that I did and I put in practice that I learned just from asking a lot of questions of my colleagues. And I'm really proud of how what's called a site visit, when you visit, when you're lucky enough to be able to travel to a country and spend some time there and meet with folks. I'm really proud that there were some practices that I also introduced that, are still to this day I've heard, super helpful. And you try to meet with as many folks as you can, and you try to attend as many events as you can. And sometimes you have very informal meetings and you don't take notes and you're just there to absorb and listen. And there's a lot of magic that happens in those moments that no one could have ever prepared you for. It's not in any manual, you just have to do what feels right. And like I said earlier, meet folks where they are.
My next question was about collaboration on a personal level. So I know that there are many women and girls who, like we discussed earlier, oftentimes feel that they aren't being heard, or when they're at a table discussion, they're either being ignored or could collaborate with other women instead to get their voices heard. And I was wondering what your thoughts were on women collaborating together to be heard in these sorts of situations, but also just women collaborating together to connect and to work and benefit each other, as you said, mentors, to make the world a better place. What are your thoughts on that? And do you have any tips for young girls to begin collaborating with other young women now?
I love that question because, again, I believe in mentorship and sponsorship is really about access and opportunities. So sometimes, again, folks think of mentorship as being very top down and being all about advice, but it should be building relationship. And, championing women and girls is incredibly important. And you find those folks who believe in you and your friends and your colleagues, and you find your team wherever you work, wherever you are in school, whatever other extracurricular activity or group you might be in, and you support each other. And so I know incredible girls and young women all around the world who have ideas and who have voice and power and influence and are not always given the space. So you really do have to make yourself known, be invited sometimes in to conversations and tables, but once you're there, and really demand that you should be there. Continue to bring others in and make your voice heard, because there's just not enough folks around the table who should be there, quite honestly. A couple and a few young women and girls is not enough. We need more. And I'm delighted that women and men that I know often decline invitations to be speaking at conferences and panels, when there are not the women who are most impacted and should be at the table there. And I think that kind of action is quite powerful. So asking for that kind of solidarity, in fact, demanding it, I think, that's the way that I've worked. Unfortunately, I didn't think, even 10 years ago that I would still be in a place where, maybe I would share an idea and it might not be heard. And it would take 2 or 3 of my, fellow colleagues to also say it until it was heard. But, once we knew that was a situation someplace we worked, we planned for it. We strategized. There's always a lot of strategy needed when you're in a difficult, maybe, environment like that. So just to know what you're maybe in for and be prepared. I think it helps to have that solidarity and support of others. Peer support is everything. You need it throughout your career, personally and professionally. My most rewarding work experiences have been because I've been invited in to be at something or to be part of a steering committee or a board. And there's lots of ways to really learn and also influence spaces. I would just say that there are a tremendous amount of opportunities, especially for girls and young women now, to be on volunteer boards and steering committees and councils. And we need you. These organizations need you internationally, nationally. So, seek folks out who might have a career you're a little bit interested in. You will probably crisscross field to field, discipline to discipline. There's no longer if you study journalism, you're a journalist, or you don't even need to go to college in a lot of cases. It's really everyone's experiences and expertise and knowledge is valued. So I would just say, find your peer support, find folks who also you have some alignment with around values. And that's a conversation to have. What are your shared values? I know for me, it's to trust and respect and support young women and girls and all women. And so, anywhere that I've worked, I found that when we have a bit of a strategy on what we need to achieve, we set our goals and objectives together in work like we do around decision making as well. And it's really gratifying, and you have great personal ownership when you feel like, your voice is heard and a decision is made, and just keep bringing in more folks around the table. That's a lifelong commitment that I've made because I've seen it from others who've brought me in and continue to bring in the most diverse voices in any work environment, on any project. And put your hand up for anything. We hear this a lot, and it's easier said than done. I've had to remind myself of this advice, not just when I was younger, but every day. You got to lean into some uncomfortableness sometimes and try to do some things that scare you a little bit. It's incredibly gratifying to be part of something that you didn't think you might have the skills for, and you can build your skills. And I'm constantly leaning on, my community of girls and women around me to help me also grow, because you never stop growing. The lifelong learner, even if that's not how you identify yourself, there's still a journey that we're all on in how we grow and push ourselves. So it helps when you have some friends and colleagues who also push you in the best possible way.
And of course, there is a very large underrepresentation of girls in positions that are leadership positions, positions of power, such as in the medical field, even in the STEM field. And I personally hope to become a public servant when I'm older, and I want to become a politician. And I remember when I was 5 years old, I used to say that I would be the first female president. And even though I do hope that there is a female president before me, I do hold the goal of public service and serving and through politics close to me. But I know that there is a sort of barrier between my dreams and many other girls' dreams when they don't really see examples of themselves in power. Of course, we haven't had a female president, but also we haven't had many people don't go to the doctor and find a female physician who checks them up, or many people don't, go online and see large philanthropic organizations. Now we have you, of course, but I think that through your work, serving as a role model for girls, how would you recommend that girls, when they don't have any role models, pursue their goals and continue to work towards making that difference, or even seeking out examples, since there is a lack of women models in the current age when there is a lack of representation of women in all of these leadership positions?
Well, I love your commitment to public service and politics, Angelina. So I'll be following your path with a lot of interest. And yes, I also thought that I would see a female president well before I am at the age I am right now. The see it to believe it. I heard that a lot. I know in my home, in my community, we were exposed to, even if we didn't know them directly, like I said, just reading the newspaper and talking about current events and politics and history. We did comment on this a lot. So I've reflected on, in spaces where that's not as visible, how that can feel very challenging. And we want there to be, the first, not the last in so many spaces. So I would just say that we need to encourage folks to remember, the arc of history, and some things are in more recent history than we would probably like to see. So if you aren't seeing it in your community, maybe there can be some inspiration or hope that's drawn from other places. And arts, media, culture, now we're so much more connected than we ever have been before. So seek out, and I'm not just saying this for you, but others, seek out where you can find some support, or what's another word for the support that I'm looking for? Just, some sort of motivation that keeps folks excited and energized about the path that they're on. Just because we need so many more diverse faces and voices and expertise and experience, like I say, life experiences, to be successful in any field, whether it is, women, peace, security, and politics, and in the environment, and in medicine, and health in general, mental health, public health. And so, there have been also some incredible trailblazers who don't always get noted in the books of history. And I'm, looking for outlets myself where I can really be inspired and encouraged, because we are lifting up successes with more diverse voices, and something, again, that I'm personally committed to anytime I make any suggestion for any speaker, but also in the work that I'm lucky enough to do right now, creating, designing, facilitating programs for philanthropy, is to have as many experienced and known faces and voices, as many as emerging and new leaders. And, there just is tremendous work being done on a project I'm working on right now, with folks under the age of 35 and under 30. And I want to make sure that they ascend the stage and are on the Zooms and are sharing what they're working on, just as much as, someone who's had a couple of published books, which is also very exciting and important. But the more that we can cross-pollinate and make sure that folks are finding the newer and emerging voices, back to, in philanthropy, when I was able to support with my colleagues newer initiatives that, maybe didn't have much funding, and maybe had an idea and weren't really sure completely of how their structure might be. It all just starts with an idea. So, the more that we also ask for exposure from major media outlets and other places where we learn that we have, just as many younger and more diverse in race and ethnicity and geography, teachers and speakers, I think we all benefit from that. We need everyone at the table, and the more that we can champion some of the underrepresented movements of folks as well, it serves us better in just finding, many of the long-term solutions to challenges that you might be thinking about in your corner of the globe.
Yes, and I have one question for you from those who've been listening to this discussion, and who also would like to improve the world. One person had asked, so you spoke about the convening of women's groups and the lessons that can be learned from these meetings. What are some of the lessons you've learned that are most impactful? Also, how can we increase access to these types of meetings so we can all learn?
It's a great question. And I would say that, I was thinking back to some of the incredible world conferences that have happened that center women's rights. And I would say that in New York every year, there's the Commission on the Status of Women. And it's an important space to still hold. And it happens for 2 weeks in March. And many of the side events with incredible grantee partners that I've been able to work with, and incredible women's and girls activists from around the world, also gets live streamed and recorded if folks can't be in New York, which often many of us can't. So looking, just even using that as a portal to connect you with many other women's organizations and girls groups and conferences they have. There's so much online now, thanks to Zoom. So you can also, I could name quite a few organizations. Girl Up is one that I've worked with, and there are just so many online opportunities where you can benefit from being live on a Zoom call, watching a webinar, seeing a fireside chat or a kind of TED Talk style power talk with incredible activists from all over the world. And that's where it begins. I wish I could make it to all the conferences that go on, because going to something like that when you are truly connected to someone's work is much more powerful than hearing, me speak about it. And I can think of a couple of moments in my life that were truly transformative because we had an Amnesty International regional or international conference, or I attended a convening, where for the first time I can hear stories. Storytelling is an incredibly powerful tool in human rights and social justice work, and also in philanthropy. Storytelling is everything. I wish I had more time to share more stories, that I've been inspired by, and some that are not my own, but that I have permission to share. And then just also some personal stories that I haven't even connected the dots, to till recently. And that's really where I think, my inspiration comes. It's when you hear folks' stories and you hear how they are, reflecting on their challenges and some of their ideas. So seeking out, the CSW, the Commission on the Status of Women, and that will connect you to whatever your issue of area, might be of interest, reading up on something, and then it just it's the rabbit hole from there. You can go from website to website, find out about an event, follow folks on social media. Now everyone seems to have, whether it's Instagram or any other platform, a way that they're also sharing news. And it's incredibly powerful to be connected and to, watch live some young women from Thailand, some young women or girls from Colombia, some Indigenous women from Guatemala. I'm just naming some countries that, I've been lucky enough to work alongside. Share also what's going on with them, and also asking for what they need. A specific call to action is always important as you think about your own, work, but also when you're really truly listening. And listening is also one of the biggest skills that needs to be developed that I value in my work. Truly listening to what folks need. What is a call to action? And it might not be the same for everyone, but getting back to there's more that you can give than just, finances. Just really giving your time, attention, staying informed and engaged is a huge part of, being part of this global community that advances gender equality.
And my final question is that there has been much that's been done to improve the world, and the world is a much better place than it has ever been. And because of your work and because of the work of many other women and many other people, the world has been improved, but it still can be improved. And I was wondering what your final words to young girls, young people, and also any person in the world as to how we can improve the world, and also just final parting words that you'd like them to hear.
Thank you, Angelina. Well, I hope that many of those folks who are listening today will reach out to me or have me connect them with anyone that they would also love to hear from and have as a speaker. I just always offer myself up anytime I can. I'm connected to so many incredible folks, and I'm excited to the folks I still haven't met yet. And I would just say that, to stay informed and engaged, you have to start with something that is meaningful to you, that, you bring your whole self, your authentic self to any work that you do, whether you, however you're showing up, if it's to be a part of something and to write, to speak on it, to be a connector. I mean, I've been talking about being a lifelong learner, and we've talked about collaboration, but connecting folks is also incredibly powerful. So, your time is valuable. Everyone's time is valuable, and you really need to invest in spaces where, you feel like you can learn and contribute. I've benefited from a career where I've been able to learn and contribute in every position that I've held. And if that wasn't the case, then I wouldn't be there. And so you have to feel energized, and you won't always feel, but you do have to feel energized about, your work in anything. So no matter how small the pieces that you're working on, it can always lead to a bigger collaboration or an unlikely collaboration and bring in other allies. So I would just say start with something that means something to you. And always remember that strong gender lens component. There's much that's been written. There's much you can learn about how to build a stronger gender lens in whatever work you're doing. It is not just isolated to human rights and social justice work. It absolutely expands to, corporate sector, whether you're working in business, in journalism, in academia. So wherever you're thinking of putting your time, strengthening your gender lens can only enhance how you show up, how you work, how you manage. And so I would just leave you with that. Just, keep building your strong gender lens, because advancing gender equality really does benefit us all, in our local community, in larger society, in our global community. And, just by the topic of this conversation, this kind of convening, I know that we are all truly citizens of the world and committed to social justice and human rights movements. So I'm just very much heartened by your commitment and interest, not only to be here, but to be connected to RFK. And I'm ready for a lot of solutions to come from younger women and girls. We need you at our tables, and I love working with girls and younger women. And so, I really believe in the solutions that are being driven by and demanded by the youth of today. So I just have a debt of gratitude to all of you for being here and also being committed to this work long term.
Thank you very, very much for all of your wonderful advice, because what we've learned from you is something that I'm sure that we will all take as we go off to change the world. So thank you so much. And now we'll pass it to Karen.
Thank you, Angelina. You're amazing. And Zaynab, thank you so much. So it was so insightful and thoughtful. You are a dear friend and a human rights defender beyond words. And I really appreciate your comments on storytelling, which is the heart of our work, telling stories to broaden the horizons, broaden understanding, to provide mirrors and windows for people to understand who they are in this world and how they can create this change that we desperately need. So thank you both so much. Thank you to Women Moving Millions and Ann Richards School for Young Women Leaders, two organizations that are playing a significant role in advancing the place and space for women and girls in this world. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We have more speakers coming up this fall. Our next one is September 27th, where we'll hear from Peter Bromberg of Every Library. And we'll be addressing the issue of book banning and what's happening in some of our public schools, and so much more this fall. If you have any questions or ideas or thoughts or feedback about today, or any programming coming down the line, you can go to rfkhumanrights.org. You can reach out to me, Robinson, at rfkhumanrights.org. We welcome your feedback. We welcome your thoughts. Together, we have a lot of work to do, but together we can make good progress. And with that, I say thank you. Thank you all so much. With much appreciation, go out with light and love and take good care.